Welcome to Keys to the Future. I'm your host, Gabby Coe. I've enjoyed a successful engineering career and want to inspire you to remain focused on your STEM education and career. Join me as I chat with amazing guests who are shaping the future and sharing their journeys to inspire yours. Ready to unlock your potential? Let's dive in. Resilience, the ability to adapt, persist, and push forward in the face of challenges. It is at the core of every success story. Today, we are diving into the power of resilience, what it means, how it shapes us, and the lessons we can learn from those who have faced adversity and have become stronger. Our guest is an astrophysicist whose journey from rural Oregon to the world of galaxies and black holes is a powerful story of resilience. A first-generation college student, she earned a Bachelor of Science in Physics from the University of Oregon and a master and doctoral degrees in astronomy and astrophysics from the University of Arizona. Along the way, she overcame financial hardship, profound personal loss, and the challenges of being a non-traditional student. As a NASA Postdoctoral Fellow at Goddard Space Flight Center with the James Webb Telescope team, her groundbreaking research continues to inspire the next generation of scientists. Please join me in welcoming Charity Woodrum. Charity, thank you so much for sharing your incredible journey with the Keys to the Future community.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I was so fascinated by your story, growing up in a small town in rural Oregon with very few resources, graduating in a high school class of 17. I imagine rural Oregon is a unique backdrop for for a future astrophysicist. Can you share with us what it was like growing up and how the sky inspired your journey into astrophysics?
Yeah, so being in rural Oregon, you have access to very dark skies at night, and so I often got to spend a lot of nights under the dark skies in Oregon. And I think with my, tumultuous home life, going out and looking up at the night sky really helped calm me in a way. I feel like it really just calmed my nervous system and also made me try to think about things from a bigger perspective. Because as humans, since our existence, we've always been going out and looking up at the night sky and wondering about our place in the universe and looking for inspiration and everything. So I think that's part of what it is to be human. So I feel really lucky that I got to grow up under those dark night skies in rural Oregon.
That is amazing. And that journey from stargazing as a child to pursuing higher education must have come with some challenges, I imagine. As the first in your family to graduate from high school, how did you navigate those hurdles and keep pushing forward?
Well, so yeah, my journey from, those days under the night skies in Oregon as a kid until now, that journey was not a straight path. There were, many turns to get here. And the path to get here was very non-traditional. So I didn't go straight into studying astrophysics. Actually, when I first graduated high school, I looked for a job that people in my community had and, looked for a way to get out of the poverty that I grew up in. And so the fastest way to do that was to become a registered nurse. And so that's actually what I pursued when I first graduated high school, was to become a registered nurse. Also, it was a job where I could help my community. So that was part of why I wanted to do it as well. But also to just, get out of survival mode, basically. And then while working as a nurse is when I eventually decided to go back to school for astrophysics.
Wow, that's amazing. And you mentioned it wasn't a straight line. A lot of us think, okay, I'm going to follow this path. And if I don't get through a certain step that I thought to get through, then I have failed. But life is just full of different paths that we can take. And whatever challenges we face, we must find a way to get to the other side, if you will. You also mentioned you started as a nursing student to help other and to also get out of your circumstances. And that's just amazing as well. And speaking of challenges, your journey took a heartbreaking turn with devastating loss that most of us would struggle to overcome. How did you find the strength to continue both academically and personally during that time?
So I first, became a registered nurse and worked for a while. And as I was working as a nurse, I couldn't really handle the emotional toll of it all. And so I started reading books by Carl Sagan and Stephen Hawking, and just really fell in love with astrophysics. And then, so a lot has happened in between here, but the personal loss that you're referring to, when I lost my husband and son, I think at that time, one of the things that helped me a lot, it eventually was school itself was a huge distraction for me. And my son and husband were very proud of me for pursuing my big dreams that I had. And so I felt like continuing on that path was honoring them. And so that was a big reason why I kept doing it, was for that distraction and to feel like I was honoring them. Another way I was able to overcome that, or not overcome, it's still a process. Grief is always a process. I wouldn't say I've overcome it, but yeah, one of the things that got me through was certainly community, people all around me, whether it was close friends, childhood best friends who I hadn't spoken to in over a decade, or friends from the university, as well as complete strangers, all stepped up. I think community is a huge reason why I was able to overcome that.
I agree that having that community around you, no matter, where you are in your journey, is essential, right? To get strength from them, to have that safety net, to be able to keep going forward. Because some days, as you mentioned, grief is a process, and you just have to get up and try and walk for a day, right? For 1 hour, for
Yes,
one
exactly.
day, and so on. Take it a step at a time, and
Yeah.
it could feel so isolating. But I'm glad that you were able to get the strength from your network of your community, your people, your tribe, those even people that you hadn't talked to in many years, it seems like. So your journey was so compelling that it was documented in the film Space, Hope, and Charity. What was it like to have your life captured on film? And were there moments that felt like emotionally challenging or even healing?
Yes, definitely. So it actually took me a while before I said yes, because the idea of stepping in front of a camera was intimidating to me. Anyone that knew me as a kid in that small rural town knew I was very shy. And so the thought of getting in front of a camera and, talking about my personal life felt intimidating. But after meeting the director of the film and asking her why she wanted to make the film, I decided to say yes. I asked her, what her goal was, and she said that she felt like, if people could see how I overcame what I had to overcome, it would help them in their own lives. And I have got that message over the years from complete strangers, because the loss of my husband and son it made national news. And so a lot of people saw that and ended up reaching out to me, and have told me over the years that watching me get through that helped them in their own lives. So I felt like our goals aligned there. So eventually I said yes. And so at first it was a bit intimidating having all of these cameras, millions of dollars worth of equipment. But eventually I just forgot that the cameras were there. I became very close friends with the cameraman himself. If I was ever crying on screen, he was crying behind the cameras. The director is now one of my closest friends, if not, yeah, she's one of my very best friends. Like the filming part became easier over time, just because they became friends of mine, and I wasn't talking to the cameras, I was just talking to my two friends. And I did invite them actually on some pretty emotional days that ended up getting filmed. I was the person to invite them. For example, I revisited the place where I witnessed the death of my husband and son for the first time. And they told me that if at any time I needed them to leave, they would just turn off the cameras and leave. Or if I needed to leave, they were very empathetic with me. So I think that helped a lot. And then having the film finished, and now we've been in film festivals all over and have done dozens of screenings, and having people watch it on a screen, that's a whole different experience, I would say, because there's a theater full of strangers just watching your life on camera, and these very intimate moments that I think in the time I wasn't thinking that people would be watching these later. And now here they are watching it on a big screen. It's very surreal. And I would say, even though it's been out for almost 2 years now in festivals and screenings and such, it's still something I don't think I'll ever get used to. But I will say it has been a very healing journey for me. Actually, one of the most recent screenings was on January 18th, which the anniversary of the day I lost my husband and son was January 15th. And typically around this time, the grief is much more at the surface. And so doing this screening so close to that day, I thought it was going to be difficult. But as I was sitting in there, in the theater with all of these people on stage during the question and answer session, I realized that all of these people just watch this film. And after you watch the film, you really get to know my husband and son. And I think they really grieve the loss of them as well. So they're often crying over the loss of Jason and Woody. And so I get a lot of people only get a community grief experience like that just the one time at the funeral. But I realize that I get to have those types of community grief every time we have one of these screenings, because they're grieving the loss of my husband and son now too. And afterwards, I'll often have personal conversations with folks that stay after, and they talk to me about their own grief journeys. And so it's been a really healing experience for me, and very cathartic.
That's amazing. I also watched your film and was very, very touched by the whole story. It was very clear that there was a lot of love and encouragement within your family of three, and that brought community that really supported you in your journey to go back to school. I'm just really curious about, because you mentioned in the very beginning, you started out studying nursing and then you were interested more in astronomy and astrophysics. And so I'm kind of a little bit curious as to how you made that leap from nursing, still a science, but into astrophysics. Can you, and you went back to school
Yes.
right when you had a family. Can you talk us through how you did that and what challenges you faced then?
As I said, as I was working as a nurse, I really couldn't handle the emotional toll. About once a week, something completely devastating would happen, and I would just think about it. And then even on the daily, you would see sad stories as well. And I couldn't separate it from my personal life. I guess I would just think about it quite often. And so for my husband, he read books a lot. He read hundreds of books a year, typically nonfiction. And he was like, "Baby, read." That was one of his coping mechanisms. So I picked up some books and came across Stephen Hawking and Carl Sagan. And I just, as a high school kid, I really loved math. And in these popular science books, they kind of glaze over the math part of it. And I really wanted to know that background. So actually when I went back to school for physics, actually, I didn't really know about the types of jobs that you could get in the field. I was actually just doing it for curiosity's sake. And actually, the first time that I walked into the office to go back to school, I was 9 months pregnant. I would say the birth of my son coming up was actually another reason that I decided to go back to school, because I wanted him to have an example of somebody that was following their biggest dreams, whether they accomplished it or not. And so I felt like if I pursued that, I would be a good example for him. And so, yeah, there I am, 9 months pregnant, going to this academic advisor's office and, told him that I had a degree in nursing and wanted to go back to physics, which would be another 4 years, just because at first I started taking calculus classes again, just to get a refresher basically in physics. And so at first it was pretty easy. I would just take one class a day pretty much. And so I was only gone from my baby for about an hour or two a day. So at first it was easier. And then later on, when he was a toddler, is when I started getting involved in research and realizing this was a job that I could actually have, and it was something that I could do in the future. And so I got a lot more involved in the physics department. And the only reason I was able to have this academic life as well as, raise a toddler was because my husband was so incredibly supportive. And I remember when I first got pregnant, and when we found out that we were having a boy, I remember he told me that, he thought to himself, how am I going to make sure that my son respects women when he grows up? And he realized that that was something he didn't need to worry about if I was going to be this child's mother. And so he felt that it was his job to support me in my big dreams. And in doing that, that's how he would make sure that that was his part to play, he felt, because like I said, he read books since he was a teenager. So he had read lots of bell hooks books, and he'd been calling himself a feminist since he was probably 15 years old. So I feel that was what he felt was his part, was to support me in my dreams. And he really did that to the highest level. So that was one of the biggest reasons I was able to have that academic life and the home life that I had back then.
That's amazing. But you explored, and through reading, you explored other things that caught your attention. You mentioned the love of math and how you went back to school. And when you went back to school, you kind of had some refreshers, because I did hear in the film that math was one of your best subjects, and the school where you graduated from had to keep bringing the next level of math because you breezed through the math, all of the math levels, which is amazing, all of the math levels at your high school. So there was a pattern there of continuing to persevere through the highest levels of math, and then research and exploring. So all of this exploration led you to where you are. And sometimes we maybe think we're at the starting line and this is how I'm going to get here. But, life took you in many different ways to get to where you are. And we're going to get there, but just hold that thought for a minute.
Okay.
So, I mean, we're talking about the incredible path that you walked, and I imagine that you're a strong advocate for others who may feel that they don't fit that traditional mold for being in STEM. And STEM is hard. I mean, STEM subjects are hard, but I think through perseverance, we can get through them. And so, how do you support and encourage maybe first generation students and those from underrepresented background in science?
Yeah, well, so one of the great things that has come from the film is that one of the early people who funded the film, after watching it for the first time, she came to the director and said, okay, what's the call to action? She wanted to do something after watching the film. And so because of her and because of that question, we ended up making what's called an enrichment fund in honor of my son, whose name was Woody. It's called Woody's Stars. And the purpose of the fund is to help students who want to pursue STEM, who come from underrepresented backgrounds or who might be facing their own hurdles. And so one of the main reasons that I've made it to where I am now, which I never thought I'd make it here, but one of the reasons I did make it here was because of the mentors I had. And now that I have my dream job, I really want to start mentoring other people who also are facing barriers like I did, or maybe barriers very similar or very different from my own. And so one of the ways I'm able to do this is with this Woody Stars Fund. But also I've picked up some mentees along the film festival journey and the screening journey with the film. When high school students watch the film, sometimes they'll approach me, especially young women. And so I've been able to find mentees that way as well. And that's been an incredibly rewarding experience. I'm just so honored to be in a position where where folks are coming to me for help. And I just want to pay it forward because I wouldn't be where I am without the amazing mentors I've had. So it's my job to help the next generation come up.
Absolutely, and I congratulate you on the fund in honor of your son's name, Woody Stars, right?
Yeah, Woody Stars. Yeah.
That's amazing. And you talk about paying it forward by mentoring others because you feel that you had that support yourself. What have you learned from your mentees?
It's interesting this is a very new experience for me. I've just started having these meetings and these emails, and when I read their emails, I see myself as them. Like they're writing exactly the type of thing I would write to my mentors, and I'm writing things back. But one of the things I'm realizing is that it's way more rewarding for me than I would have realized. It doesn't even feel like work at all. I just feel so honored for these people to be looking to me for these answers, and it also makes me want to be better at what I do and a better mentor, better person, better scientist. And so it's in turn inspired me a whole lot to just be better for them. And so I can help them even more.
And so now I'm also wondering about the mentors that you had. Can you tell us a little bit more? Did you seek them out, or how did you come about having a mentoring relationship with those that mentored you along the way?
I would say a real turning point was when I met my undergrad research advisor, Dr. Scott Fisher. And I did seek him out very, very annoyingly, probably, because back when Woody was only like a month old, I was taking calculus, and I also took an astronomy 100 class. And in that class, he told us about his own journey. And he used to work at Gemini Observatory. And I realized that you didn't have to be Stephen Hawking to have a job in this field, that there was people like him who worked in this field. And so it was the first time I realized that I could get a job in this field. And he ran an observatory, which was a couple of hours away from where the university was. And he also had a research group. And so after class, I went up to him and said, can I join your research group? And he said, no, it's full, but come back to me later. And so I was like, okay. And about, a week later, I show up again. I'm like, how's the research group doing? And he realized this was going to be a thing and I was going to keep coming in. And so he said, why don't you come over to Pine Mountain Observatory, our little observatory? And so I started volunteering up there and just giving tours of the night sky to just random public visitors that would come up. And Woody and Jason would actually go with me because they would often camp. And so sometimes I'd have to shut down the observatory to go breastfeed Woody and then come back. But that's how it started out, was Dr. Fisher. He really showed me that there's this whole world that I didn't know about. And eventually he did have an opening in his research group. And so his boss from Gemini Observatory, she had this project for students, but had no students. He had students, but no projects. And so he connected me with her. And so she became another significant mentor to me. She's a very excellent scientist. And so if it wasn't for those two, I would not have made it into grad school and then wouldn't have my dream job now. And so they literally changed my life. And then, of course, in the middle of all of that is when I lost my husband and son, and my research and the research group ended up being more important for my survival than I realized. Actually, neither of them knew how important it was. They were there for me, and they did more for me than would ever be expected of a professor. But they have now seen the film, and now they both realize exactly how much it meant to me. And so we've had some, very heartfelt conversations about that now that we're more, colleagues than mentor-mentee type situation. So that's been amazing. But yeah, I would say that Dr. Fisher certainly completely changed my life. And so did Inger Jorgensen, who was his boss up at Gemini. And I've had other mentors along the way, like my PhD advisor is completely amazing as well. And my current boss even. So I've been very lucky to find good mentors along the way.
Absolutely. I think it's important to find those who have been there. In the case of Dr. Fisher, he had been there in where you were aspiring to be or to get to. And others, you also mentioned a peer that was also another student that you're going through it together. So you're kind of helping each other along. And then others even that come along because you meet these other people. So I think it's important to find those people that are going to be there for you no matter the challenges. They are there with your losses, your victories, and they're celebrating their victories as well. But also, I think holding you accountable.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Especially my childhood best friends knew me and, ever since I was from rural Oregon. So they always know they can tell me anything and be completely honest. So, I know they would hold me accountable for anything. So I agree.
So you are a NASA Postdoctoral Fellow at Goddard Space Flight Center with
Yes.
the James Webb Telescope team. How incredible is that? Can you share with us what your day is like?
This is actually my dream job, and I never thought I'd get here, but now that I'm here, I'm still pinching myself, and sometimes I still get tears in my eyes walking through the hallways of NASA with the logo everywhere and everything. My job is 100% research, and I study galaxies. So my research seeks to understand how do galaxies form, and then also how do they change over time. And the James Webb Space Telescope is the perfect instrument to help us answer these questions, especially in answering, how do galaxies form? How do the first galaxies form? And so all of my research topics have been, have been around this field of galaxy evolution. And I've also gotten involved with the science communication team because that's a passion of mine now. Dr. Fisher from undergrad, he's a really great at public outreach. And then doing those tours of the night sky up at Pine Mountain Observatory really gave me this passion for public outreach. So I've also got involved with the outreach team and have done some TV interviews and such for NASA whenever we have these live shots on local news stations all over. But I get paid to do research with the James Webb Space Telescope and study how do galaxies form, how do they evolve. One of the main questions I'm trying to answer is why do they stop forming stars? So yeah.
Wow, that's amazing because I worked for the company that built the James Webb Telescope. I wasn't part of it, but it was just a pride from our company. So it's
Yes.
amazing to be talking to somebody who's actually using it.
Yeah, no, it took thousands of people like you, thousands of scientists, engineers for the past 30 years to build this thing. So it's just an example of what humans can do when we work together. And it's not just one of us that's doing it. It took thousands. So I love that you helped, you worked for the company that helped build it, and now I'm using it. So that's amazing. Yeah.
That is amazing. I mean, how many degrees of separation are we talking about,
Right.
right? That's really cool. That is really cool. What kind of STEM skills are you using in your day to day?
When I first got into this, I didn't realize how many skills it takes. Actually, for my first research project, I didn't know any coding languages, and I was using Microsoft Excel. And it completely failed me in a very bad way. And I had to go to Inger and say, Inger, I made a very big mistake here. Well, it was Microsoft Excel's fault. But that day I was like, okay, I've got to learn a coding language. So I went and took the computer science 100 level Python coding class, which is where you have this little turtle and you learn how to move the turtle around. That's how basic we're talking about here. So that's how I learned how to code. And a large portion of my job is actually doing coding. In my field, we use Python a lot. But there's other ways you can get involved in astronomy, and you would have to be an even better coder than I am and use other languages as well. But I just use Python. It also requires a lot of writing skills, technical writing. So for example, right now I'm writing a paper that I'll submit to the Astrophysical Journal, and I have the coding part mostly done. That's where I do the data analysis. So it does take data analysis. And now I'm doing the writing part and actually writing the paper. So that's another big skill set that you have to learn. So a lot of coding, a lot of writing. And there are fun times too when you get to go up to the telescopes. I can't go to space, but I have done projects before where I used a ground-based telescope and actually got to go observe with the telescope, and that's always fun. But at NASA, we do have one of the space telescopes that's being built right now, so I can go look in on it and see how it's doing. But yeah.
That's amazing. I would love to be a little fly on the wall and see what you're doing every day.
I was going to tell you that we do have tours for it, and it's the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope is being built right now at NASA Goddard, and it's in the big clean room, so it's the perfect time to come look at it and visit. Yeah.
Oh, well, I may take you up on that offer.
Yeah, you should.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you mentioned coding, data analysis, technical writing are all good skills to start early on, because even if when you're in school, you need to be able to communicate what you're working on, your projects, describe what you're working on as that project. So that's involves some technical writing as well.
Yes.
Coding nowadays, it's an essential skill as well, even as basic as you mentioned. So, and then data analysis, you have to be able to do. As an engineer, we do a lot of data analysis, and we're a data driven society to make decisions very quickly. So it's just amazing, all of the things that sometimes you don't think about in school. You're learning, and you're probably thinking, oh, why am I going to do this with this?
Yeah.
But yes, you do apply it.
I would say for students, just keep up with the math, keep doing the math, and getting as advanced as you can there, and then learn coding as early as possible. But again, I didn't learn it until my sophomore year of college, undergraduate. But it is best to learn it the earlier the better. So
your story is incredibly inspiring, as we've been talking about, especially for those who face daunting obstacles. What message would you like to share with the individuals who dream of a career in science or dream of a career in NASA, but feel that the odds may be stacked against them?
I would say don't listen to anyone who tells you that you can't do it. I think coming from first generation or from somebody who's typically not represented in these fields, when somebody tells you that, it hits pretty hard. So just don't listen to them, because that's a reflection of them and it has nothing to do with you. I've had many people tell me every single step of the way that I've been on this journey that I couldn't do it. And here I am. I'm at the job now, and I didn't myself think I would do it, but just don't listen to anyone who tells you that you can't do it. That's a reflection of them, not you. And honestly, being able to overcome obstacles is going to help you. Not everyone in the field knows how to do that. In fact, I've heard advisors ask their students, have you ever actually faced a barrier in your life before? And a lot of times for these students, the answer is no. So people like us, we've faced barriers before. And so, we already know how to get through obstacles. And so I think in that way, these are skills that will serve you well down the road. And so just keep going.
Absolutely, absolutely. Charity, thank you for sharing your story with the Keys to the Future community. It is sure to inspire so many others in their path to surround themselves with a community of those who will see them through the challenges.
Thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. Don't forget to follow Keys to the Future on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts for more inspiring stories and industry insights. Until then, keep innovating and stay curious.